The views and opinions expressed by guests on this show are those of our guests, not necessarily ours. We are interested in presenting different viewpoints and strive to be neutral parties. We leave it up to you to make your own judgments. Welcome to Vision Chat, a podcast about spiritual topics, with your hosts, Virginia and Stina. Hello and welcome to another season of Vision Chat. We are in season 4. Can you believe that, Stina? So today we have a very special guest, and we're hoping that you all, as with all our guests, learn some new information and benefit from what you're about to hear while keeping you entertained. So we have Bean Bindloss. Bean is a perimenopause doula, supporting women with the unique combination of nutritional therapy, integrative hypnosis, and spiritual magic. She works with women who value a body, heart, mind, soul approach, and who don't want to sleep through this major midlife transition. This stage has been widely misunderstood to be a miserable ending, when in fact, it is a new beginning, and it's time to revolutionize the narrative around perimenopause. Bean offers online courses, workshops, and in-depth one-on-one consultations. Bean, it's so lovely to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell us more about yourself?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I've been really looking forward to having this chat with you. So I am a mother. I live in Somerset in the UK. I have a dog and a cat, and I am a perimenopause doula. So what I love doing is supporting women, guiding them through this big transition. I think it's really important to address well-being on the different levels that well-being exists. So the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual. There are so many different practitioners out there, and the doctors, we need the doctors. They only really work on the physical layer. There are lots of spiritual, energetic practitioners are amazing. Very hopefully increasing, it's more and more people will work on all the layers, and I have seen people do that more, but I think it's really important to address all the layers because they all affect each other. I just absolutely love it. It's as I said, and as you said in the intro, like it's really time to change up the narrative about perimenopause.
How did you get into all of that?
Probably quite a circuitous route. So I started off training as a nutritional therapist, and like many nutritional therapists, that came about because I was having issues myself, and I only was able to resolve them by working with a nutritional therapist. I went down the doctor route, and they weren't able to support me, but they did what they could, and it didn't get me where I needed to be, but I did get there with the help of nutritional therapy. Well, I got so far with nutritional therapy. It made a huge difference, and I found it so inspiring. And it combined my love of food. I've been a foodie all my life, and also a long-term interest in the body and biology and how things work physically. So it was like the perfect combination. And I was lucky enough to stop working and be able to be at home with the children. I've got 2 children when they were small, but when they were both going to school, I needed to do something else, and I didn't want to go back to what I was previously doing. So I started training in nutritional therapy. I'm so glad I did it, and it was the hardest thing I did. But I only got so far with my recovery, and over the past 8 years, I've been trying various things, and the really most profound improvements I made has been through looking at the emotional and the spiritual side of things as well. So I'm like, God, wow, this has made so much difference. This is insane. I've got to look at this and be able to provide this. And I guess initially I would signpost my clients to where they could get support, but I was like, oh, it's really frustrating. I can't do this myself. And in terms of the perimenopause itself, I have worked in different areas of nutritional therapy. I started off seeing everyone I could, and gradually kind of trying to find different niches. And for a while, I worked in fertility and supporting couples who were struggling to get pregnant, which is very rewarding, but it wasn't quite the thing that I needed to do. and I think it's also going through perimenopause myself and putting all the pieces of it together. I'm like, God, got to share this. So that's where it's come from.
Can you tell us the difference between perimenopause and menopause? Because I'll tell you honestly, my whole life I've heard menopause. And in my mind, menopause was something that happened to really old ladies, like when they were in their 60s, 70s, whatever, That's what I thought. So somewhere along the way, people started mentioning perimenopause. And I'm like, what is that? What's perimenopause? And then I learned about it myself more in depth in a doctor's visit when my doctor was telling me, you're perimenopausal. And I said, what? Me? No way. How can that be happening? What a shocker. So I don't want people to get caught off guard, and maybe we can provide some education around this as well. Like, when do women need to start talking about perimenopause? When do we need to start worrying about it? Like, please educate us.
Oh, I'd love to. And it's such a great question because it is confusing. So menopause, you reach menopause. It's a moment in time. So you reach menopause once you've had 12 months since your last period. So you've had 12 months with no periods. At that point, you reach menopause. And beyond that, you kind of graduated to postmenopause. The average woman reaches menopause around age 50, 51. Although I think probably that information is largely based on white Caucasians. I think it varies depending on your ethnicity a little bit. And your body can't just switch off the ovarian function because we have estrogen receptors all over the brain. It has to be a gradual process of winding down those reproductive functions. So perimenopause is that phase where your body is transitioning down and off, stopping being reproductively active to then being postmenopausal. So, there's a lot of change happening in the brain, and it really starts with the brain. And then as perimenopause progresses, then you start noticing it more physically, and periods start getting more irregular and more far apart, and you might go for 5 or 6 months without a period, and it can be quite quick in some women. It can be maybe a year or two, and in other women it can be quite extended, and it can be 10 or plus years. So it really, really varies, but that's the general pattern. And in early menopause, actually perimenopause can start in your late 30s. So you may not notice anything happening, but the brain changes are beginning in your late 30s potentially. And then when you may start noticing in early perimenopause things like you're feeling more stress. You can't handle the same things that you'd always been able to juggle quite easily. You feel more reactive, more stressed. Your sleep becomes more tricky. So you find it difficult to get sleep, to stay asleep, or you keep waking up in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep. So those are kind of classic signs of early menopause, and as it varies for each woman, but that's the general sort of trend. And so that's the kind of early feeling, your nervous system becoming more sensitive. It's going through this huge physical change, and it's really so much going on in your nervous system. So then the first thing that tends to happen is that your production of progesterone, which is normally when you're having regular cycles, is dominant in the second half of your menstrual cycle. So if your menstrual cycle starts on day one of your menstrual cycle is your first day of your bleed, progesterone tends to be dominant between ovulation and when you start your bleed, and your ability to produce normal amounts of regular reproductive amounts of progesterone starts dropping. And because progesterone is such a soothing, calming influence in the nervous system, then you lose that. So that's why you can feel more stressed. It's harder to sleep. And then you can, without progesterone to balance out estrogen, then you can start getting symptoms like more PMS, like, sore, swollen boobs, water retention, heavy periods. And also another thing that comes up a lot in early perimenopause is anxiety. A lot of anxiety can start kicking off, and exacerbation of anxiety that you may already have, or anxiety that you've never really experienced before. And then as you go through perimenopause, you get into the more advanced stages, then estrogen starts fluctuating all over the place. So it's more like a roller coaster. So you get raging high levels and then crashing low levels. And that's quite difficult for your body to handle. So that can be quite stressful, and it's those fluctuating changes that can trigger the hot flushes and the night sweats, and then you can get, again, really heavy periods and all the symptoms of high estrogen and low estrogen, like vaginal dryness and brain fog and bone pain and all the other things that are typically associated with perimenopause.
It sounds like fun.
That's the kind of the physical, yeah.
It's terrible. Let me tell you. I mean, maybe we can jump right into it. I don't know, like, how do we navigate this? Like, it's such a body heavy process, but then it's also mental and emotional. Like, it's all tied in together. How do we handle this stage in life, and not just handle it, but like, I'm hearing a lot of like, well, be grateful that you get to age, and I agree. Like, I totally agree. And I want to be grateful, but I don't want to be a hypocrite. And right now I'm having a hard time. Like, how do I gracefully go through this period of time and like, be grateful for every day when I'm feeling like garbage?
Yeah.
Seriously, help us. What do we do?
Okay, well, the first thing I suggest is giving yourself a really big dose of self-compassion, and like a big hug. I think so much of the issues that women experience in perimenopause is the fact that we live in a world that is not suited to our physiology. We are flowing cyclical women that fit into a linear masculine landscape, and I think so much of that is a problem. We're under so much stress normally that way beyond what we should be handling normally, but the influence of progesterone and estrogen helps keep us going, like almost kind of artificially. So when we lose that it kind of really hits the fan. So really, really giving ourselves a lot of self-compassion, because like the world is against you, like, if you're living in the Western world. And so, like, to extend that, I like the idea of women bubble wrapping themselves. So giving themselves more space, more time, little pockets of solitude or silence, time where you can just anchor yourself and kind of just come to a little bit, so that your nervous system can just find a neutral point. Like, our lives are so busy, where our nervous system, which is going through this and orchestrating this huge change, is, your nervous system is going to be processing the stuff that you're looking at on Instagram and listening to in a podcast, and it's being bombarded all the time. And I think it really, really helps to look after your nervous system during perimenopause. So finding things that light you up and having fun, laughing with your friends, and having that connection with the people that you love and who support you, while also finding those moments or pockets of time where you can really completely decompress and relax and soothe. And whether that's like walking with your dog without listening to anything, just in silence, or 20 minutes in a bath on your own, to maybe going away for a week on your own, or whatever it is that you can do, I think that can be really helpful. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, but I think, so the traditional Chinese medicine approach to perimenopause is about looking after the kidneys. And so when you're looking after the kidneys, it's about slowing down, resting, keeping warm, nourishing the adrenal glands, which sit there, which have to take over the production of progesterone and estrogen after menopause. So it's like, really soothing and nourishing yourself. I think women do not need any alcohol during perimenopause. I think that makes everything worse. Really, honestly, especially if you have a personal or a family history of breast cancer, drinking alcohol during this phase can really increase your chances of developing breast cancer, because it really screws with the way that you metabolize estrogen, you metabolize it in a much far unhealthier way. So, being sensible, avoiding or cutting right back your alcohol, thinking about your nervous system. So other stimulants, so coffee, to get through the day when we're living in this world that doesn't suit our physiology, we can really rely on caffeine. But one of the things that you can really do is reducing and being really honest with yourself about how well you're tolerating caffeine, and reducing it as much as possible, maybe swapping it with some really good quality green tea, which can be really calming as well and soothing. Women getting support, like having a team there, like having your friends there, having someone who you can talk to and who you do talk to, making sure you talk to people and making sure you see people that you really love spending time with and who fill you up. Maybe joining a perimenopause circle, a women's circle, so that you can connect with other women and share in a safe way. Working with a traditional Chinese medicine acupuncturist, or personally, what I find gets me through is biodynamic craniosacral therapy, which is so soothing. It's like taking it's like letting some pressure out of a pressure cooker, letting the steam out. Really, really helps the body to relax and soothe, and the nervous system. So just thinking about it, those are some really important go-tos, I would say.
What was this last one that you mentioned? The cranial? I've never heard of that. What is that?
Oh God, it's amazing. So craniosacral therapy, but there's a particular kind that is biodynamic. It's called biodynamic. So craniosacral therapy is literally you're very passive. You lie down on a bed, and the practitioner lays their hands on various parts of your body according to what they feel the body needs. And what they're doing is they're connecting with the cerebral spinal fluid, and they're so sensitive that they can tell how that cerebrospinal fluid is moving through your body, and that gives them a lot of information about your nervous system and how things are working. And it's also using their intuition to highlight anything that needs supporting. So it's so soothing for your nervous system, but on a spiritual level, I find it so supportive for doing the inner work. And that's another huge piece that comes up in perimenopause. But I think perimenopause is a time where stresses and traumas and emotional wounds bubble up, and people often, the first thing that people think of is going to see a psychotherapist. And that definitely has its place. It's really important for helping you make sense of things and giving you tools and very important things. However, it is all going on in your head. And what we know about trauma is that it stays in the body. And so finding a therapy that you resonate with, and for me, it's biodynamic craniosacral therapy. It could be somatic work. It could be trauma release exercises. It could be yoga. But finding a way to access what's stored in the body and letting it go is so profound, because it's important to make sense of it mentally on a mental level, but you have to access it and let it go on a physical body level, and that's not something you can do consciously. And what a craniosacral therapist can do is just listen to what the body is telling them, and all the body needs is to have someone listen and witness. But you don't need to do anything about it. The body knows what to do. But for me, I find that profoundly helpful.
Correct me if I'm thinking a bit wrongly here, but can you, is it like people that comes in their menopause, that everything they haven't dealt with of trauma and stuff they're carrying comes in like a flood wave when they go into menopause in a way? Or
I think it definitely can. Yeah, the way I see it, this phase, in the Celtic British tradition, that we have the three feminine archetypes of the maiden, the mother, and the crone, and this is the transition from the mother into the crone, the wise woman, whether you resonate with that or not. But we are stepping into a much wiser phase of our life, and I think that paying attention to what comes up on a trauma level, processing your wounds, helps to turn that pain into wisdom. It's like the Japanese art of kintsugi. It's turning pain into gold, and I think that's part of why it does come up. And it's so tempting just to push it away, as we tend to do through our lives. But if you can, just give yourself space, even just to feel what's coming up, can be so transformative. But one thing I'd like to say is that there's a lot of research going into women who have neurodiversity, autism, women who are highly sensitive, or who have had lots of trauma in their lives. This process can be doubly hard, and maybe the traumas come up in a more intense way. The physical changes can be more intense. Your nervous system bandwidth isn't quite as big, you can't quite handle so much. So maybe if someone's listening and they have neurodiversity or autism or highly sensitive, just to be aware that it might be extra intense, so to give yourself extra self-compassion and support and time and care.
Do you have any recommendations for people around that doesn't really know what menopause is, or if it's their husbands or siblings or other family, what can they do to kind of help the person that is going through this transition to make it more comfortable and better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I suggest to women is that they communicate how they're feeling, and they communicate with their loved ones about what's going on for them, and just be open so that people know what's going on in them. You know, even if you're not entirely sure yourself, you know, you can at least say, listen, I'm just feeling really, really overwhelmed right now. Or, you know, the nervous system becomes more sensitive, and maybe some women find it harder to do all the things, juggle all the balls that we all juggle. I think it's really important to ask for help when you need it. Finding the people who you feel that you can ask of help from, and to be there for other people who need help when they need it. There's this kind of idea that you should do really as little as you can possibly get away with. So helping take up the slack for the woman who's going through this, like doing that extra bit more so that they don't have to do quite so much. I think it's just really helpful to know that women are just less able to cope with quite so much, and they're not necessarily being difficult. So communicating, being helpful, taking up the slack, I think that can be very, very helpful.
How do we connect more of the like spiritual piece and like what was part of like I think somewhere in the intro was like magic. The word magic was in a description of what you do. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so you know, in traditions all over the world in various different ways, like there's this tradition of women coming into their spiritual power. So the magic is your intuition that really comes online, and many women are connected with their intuition, but it can really start enhancing and getting a lot stronger. And that's where our wisdom comes in as well. So it's about finding time to be still. So your intuition, you can't access your intuition if you're thinking about what's for supper on Tuesday or what happened last week or way back in the past. You have to be right in this moment for it to drop in. So it's finding those ways that you enjoy and can fit into your day where you are present in the moment, and paying attention to how your body responds to what's going on in the world. So I talk to people about, you know, noticing whether suggestions, ideas give you like a feeling of expansiveness and excitement and a kind of sense of leaning forward or wanting to shrink back and kind of avoid something as a means of following what your intuition is trying to tell you. I use human design as well, and to help me guide how someone's spiritual gifts might be coming through for them. You know, paying attention to those instant hits, and then also your gut reaction, and trying to combine all those things together, and using ritual to help ensure that you're grounded and anchored. And so, you know, because there's so many spiritual people, especially now that we're going to be going into a Virgo Pisces axis, where there's going to be a lot of spiritually ungrounded people. So it's about helping women find ways to ground themselves and be present, so that their intuition can build and build and build, and they can use that, and giving them confidence to use that in their life. And with some women, you know, it comes through really easily in all sorts of the different ways that it does. And other women, it's really about learning to trust themselves and believe what their bodies are telling them. And that's kind of my story as well. So that's a little bit about that side of things.
You started talking a little bit more of our language here with the astrology. So, you know, do you use astrology? Does it inform the work that you do with women? Do you use meditation techniques? It sounds like you're using maybe a blend of things.
Yeah, I think it's a unique blend of things, and I'm still working things out. But on a personal level, I'm fascinated by astrology, and I do use it for me myself. I've done a little course. Like, I think astrology is such a huge, complex thing, and you can be using it for 10 years and still be learning so much and have so much more to learn. So I've just dipped my toe in a little bit, just to be able to, if women are interested in it, to help guide them about what a few very simple things might be telling them. You know, there's a lot of things going on in this phase of life in your 40s and early 50s. A lot, you know, Saturn return, all of these different phases and cycles in the astrology that are coming along to shake us up and make sure that we're letting go of the things that are no longer serving us, and are realigning ourselves onto the path that is right for us, and helping us see the things that are in our shadow that we need to embrace, and step into our power, and owning, having more confidence and looking at the limiting beliefs that we have. And I think astrology is so helpful for that. I really, really value that, and what it can help us, how it can help us learn and be aware, what the things it can help us be aware of.
I might be asking you to out yourself here, so if you don't want to answer this question, it's okay. But like, do you identify as like a light worker or psychic, empath, healer? Like, how are you feeling about these labels? Like, do you connect with any of those?
Do you know what? I would love the idea of connecting to be a psychic. I would absolutely love that so much. I think where I am now is an empath. Yeah, I would love to be a psychic. And I think, to some level we all are, aren't we? But yeah, at the moment I feel most strongly about being an empath. Yeah.
You're saying you would love to be a psychic. Maybe you already are and you don't know.
Yeah, so this is my
a little bit.
Yeah. I think this is my personal journey. What I really would love to do is help women step into their power, but I'm the one who's learning that myself. Like, I have been someone who has been felt very disempowered and lacking in confidence, and very, very blended boundaries, and not recognizing my own strengths and things. So I think, so for me, it's still a journey. Like, I'm still learning to trust what my system is telling me, and it's got so far already, but there's a lot that I need to still build in before I can. Well, gosh, I'm just talking myself out of it right now, but yeah, I think if I had more self-belief, that could be true.
Well, it's interesting because you were talking, some of the verbiage you're using, grounding, releasing what no longer serves. These are things that, like, Stina and I, when we meditate, these are the exact same things that we're teaching others and doing ourselves. But our meditation, the way Stina and I met in the meditation class / psychic development class, because we developed our psychic intuition and our knowledge through meditation.
Yeah.
And so, the things that you're talking about are things that we, that's our vocabulary as well. So I'm just really curious here. Maybe we can talk afterwards, but like, you might already be further along on your journey than you realize, as far as that.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to talk about the kind of clients that do seek you out? Like, what do you think are the best, like, who should be seeking you out? Like, best fit of clients, or if you had like an ideal client, who would that person be?
That person it's a good question. That person would be curious, and I think open to learning more about this sort of thing, aware that you can't just rely on a supplement or for someone else to do the things. It requires you to make changes. It requires you to put in some effort. If you're feeling rubbish, if you're feeling tired, if you've got digestion issues, if you're feeling stuck, if you've got a foggy head, all of these things that women come and see me about, they're not going to improve if you're not changing the situation that you're in. The situation has to change. You're not going to get, like this analogy with the fish tank, the fish aren't going to get better because you add different food or whatever. You've got to change the water and clean the filtration system. So women who know that there's no quick fix necessarily, and that really interested in the magic of what could unfold, and are open, and who like food. It's very hard to work with someone who doesn't like food.
Sorry, I'm just really curious. Why is it that people have to like food?
Well, no, it can be really hard to motivate someone if they just see food as fuel. And there are plenty of people who just can't get excited about like their breakfast. They're just not interested. They'd just rather eat something and move on to the next thing, and something else excites them. But if you've got to help them make dietary changes, then that can be really quite tough to work with.
You were a chef before, right?
I wouldn't say chef, no, but I've done cooking for families and living with people and cooking with them on holiday and things like that, and working at Borough Market, which is a great foodie venue in London. And I nearly set up a business making homemade frozen food, like really good quality homemade frozen food for busy people. And I also nearly trained as a chocolatier, but I'm a trained chef, but I haven't ever worked as a chef.
But I love that. I feel also food is so much more. It's something to be experienced, and it's something that can heal your body and do so much more than just fill you up and then move on.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a way of nourishing yourself and self-love and connecting with other people and relaxing, and there's so much to it. for sure. And this is why the Mediterranean diet is so good, because traditionally in the Mediterranean, you sit down and eat slowly with your family and have fun and take your time and enjoy good quality seasonal food, which is very much not how we eat now. I think there's so much more to eating and food than just what it is.
Are there any particular foods, like magic foods, that you recommend or that are your go-to for women that are going through perimenopause or menopause?
I'm a bit nervous about recommending like blanket for everyone, because people do respond differently. But if women are able to have at least one portion of cruciferous vegetables a day, so cruciferous vegetables are the ones that are kind of sulfury, so broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, rocket, watercress. These kinds of vegetables that in the cruciferous family are really amazing at making sure that you're breaking down and processing estrogen safely, and that's so important to how your body feels, but your risk of breast cancer, and nourishing your gut as well. It's really important for nourishing your gut. So I'd say cruciferous vegetables, tofu and tempeh, fermented soy can be also really helpful alongside other foods called phytoestrogens, which are plant estrogens. So, your hormones, each hormone has a specific structure, and these plant estrogens have the same structure as your hormone estrogen. So it can be really beneficial for balancing out high and low levels of estrogen. So that would be tofu, tempeh, beans, legumes, and flax seeds are really, really important part of the diet. So I think, healthy fats like olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, making sure you have plenty of protein, starting your day with a good breakfast full of protein, eggs, wonderful way to start the day. Green tea can be also really a good choice in perimenopause because it's calming and full of antioxidants. And one of the things that makes your physical experience of perimenopause much worse is inflammation. So anything that helps to reduce inflammation, green tea is really wonderful at that. Yeah, I think those are really good ones to start with.
Are there any foods that are particularly bad for women in perimenopause?
Does alcohol count?
Sure, we can do that in there.
So if you can put alcohol in the camp, I would say alcohol for sure. So any highly inflammatory foods would be processed sugary fast foods containing trans fats and a lot of sugar. These are fats that have been manipulated in factories, and your body really struggles to process and know what to do with, and can really create inflammation. I would stay away from cakes and biscuits and things that you've bought. I don't think it's a good idea to avoid those things completely, but ideally keeping them for a special occasion, homemade, so you know what's gone into them. There's so much hoodwinking in the food industry world. So, you think you're eating one thing and actually you're eating so much crap. So being in control of what you're eating and trying to make sure that being reasonable and where you can have control is eating home cooked foods. Yeah, so I think things like Dunkin' Donut, fast food, fluffy white carbohydrates, I think are a real enemy for perimenopausal women.
Do you have any recommendations for all the women that hasn't come to the menopause yet, but they're on their way there? It's a few years ahead.
Getting to know your cycle is really helpful. So getting to know what's normal for you, getting to be aware of the different phases of the cycle, of the menstrual cycle, and especially paying attention to what comes up in that second half of your cycle between when you ovulate and when you bleed, especially in the approach to when you start bleeding, because it's a little bit like perimenopause. The hormones are dropping. You can see things without that fog, without the veil of the hormones slightly distorting things for you, making you feel a bit more easygoing. So often, women get accused of being highly emotional and irrational at this phase just before their period, when they can be more emotional. But I feel like it's actually they're seeing things much more clearly, and they're less willing to put up with things that aren't working for them. So getting to know that part of your cycle and paying attention to what comes up, because you're gradually going to be chipping away at these things which would otherwise come up much more strongly in perimenopause. So that kind of on an emotional level. I would encourage women to really experiment with different ways of, self-care. I don't like that phrase, but things that really fill you up and the things that you find really soothing and grounding, so that you know what's in your toolkit when you need it in perimenopause. It can be quite hard going when you're in the throes of an emotional sort of swirl and you don't quite know what you need. But if you already know what you need and what works for you, then you know you can hit the ground running. It's so much more empowered. The way I see perimenopause, you're entering an estrogen deficient state, and you need to take HRT to because you've lost it, and without it you're going to get Alzheimer's, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, all of these things that the risks tend to increase after menopause. But we have evolved to have to go through menopause and live 10, 20 years beyond it, 25 years sometimes beyond menopause. We have evolved that. Evolution wouldn't make the effort and maintain that. It's highly demanding. They wouldn't maintain that if it wasn't good evolutionary purpose. What I think happens is estrogen and progesterone are very protective. If there's something going on under the surface, your digestion isn't working very well, your liver is not working very well, your immune system is dysregulated, estrogen will kind of protect that. And as progesterone and estrogen decrease, you're losing that protection. So anything that's running under the surface can flare up. There's something going on with your bones and you're losing bone density, in your 30s because you're having too much caffeine and you've got a genetic variation that means that you're going to lose bone density a little bit more easily. If you've got digestive issues that you're not addressing, that you're just putting up with, they're going to get worse during menopause, perimenopause. So pay attention to what is going on physically and take action to resolve them. See a herbalist, see a traditional Chinese medicine, see a nutritional therapist to resolve those things, because the likelihood is with the loss of estrogen and progesterone, that's going to get worse and could, increase your risks of various different things if you're not on top of it.
So bottom line, pay more attention to your body.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's communicating with you all the time. Pay attention for sure. And, there's a lot to say about that. Like, we're living in a patriarchal world that has encouraged us over the centuries to disconnect and stop trusting what our body is telling us. And ultimately, this is part of the invitation of perimenopause, is to come back to relationship with your body and listen to its wisdom.
Are there any books, podcasts, any recommendations for women that want to learn more, or things that have helped you along the way?
There is a doctor in Australia called Lara Briden, and she's written some books, and she would be a really good, if you want a book, she would be a really good resource on a physical level to have in your pocket. There are 2 books by a woman called Sharon Blackie, and I can give you the links to these if you want to share them. One is called If Women Rose Rooted, and the other one is called Hagitude. And it's about this relationship that women have with nature, and it's reclaiming that relationship that women have with nature through their cycles, through their natural wisdom as women, through perimenopause, and transitioning to those sort of archetypes. In the UK, we have the maiden, mother, and the crone. And there's another book called Wise Power by 2 women whose names I've forgotten. I'm really sorry I've forgotten their names, but they are brilliant. And they run a school for people to learn about menstrual wisdom, and this book is about the wisdom of menopause. So a combination of those books would kind of cover most bases, I think. To be honest, I haven't found many podcasts. I'm quite particular about podcasts that I listen to, and I haven't found many that I like listening to, but there are many out there that do talk about this. Oh, there is one more book called Second Spring, which I think is also really good, by Kate Codrington. These are all pretty much all British women. I'm sure you've got loads in the States or in Canada, in different places that have their own take on it too, similar take.
We'll have to do more research and find them. I don't know any. I should be more well versed in this, but I'm not.
Well, there's so much. I mean, there's so much.
I have 2 questions for you. Answer them in any order that you like. One, I'm just curious about where you came up with the name Bean, or why you use Bean, and your business is called The Nutritional Bean. So maybe you want to talk to us about that as well, and just how people can find you.
Okay, thank you. So I was christened Harriet, and there's no immediate link between Harriet and Bean, but I have been called Bean all my life by my father and my brothers, not my mother, who keeps calling me Harriet. And there are 2 different reasons, and I don't know which is the right one, and if either of them are right anyway. I was born in Belgium and spent my first 7 years in Belgium. And in Belgium, in French, Bean is haricot vert, and haricot vert is maybe similar to Harriet a little bit. So maybe there was that little jump. The other idea is that my father always wanted to call one of his children Bean, and it didn't stick with my brothers, but it did stick with me. I don't know which is the right one or if either of them are. But I thought, nutritional bean worked quite well because I am bean and beans are really good for you. So I don't know.
Awesome.
love
Thank you
that.
for sharing.
Yeah.
So how can people find you?
Okay, so I'm generally hanging out on Instagram as the nutritional bean, and I like talking to people in my DMs. So anyone who wants to DM me, I'm very happy to chat. And my website is thenutritionalbean.com. So hopefully that's quite simple and easy.
Any final thoughts? Anything else you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, I'll probably, I probably think of loads of things in an hour when I can't.
If you want to, we can take a part 2 if there's a lot you want to talk about.
Oh, there is so much to talk about in this space. There is so
Yeah.
much. I haven't, there's so much about the transition through like the actual kind of emotional transition of perimenopause, which is huge. So, I can chat for hours about this. So I'd love the idea of a part 2, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much for joining our podcast and taking time and sharing all your wisdom. I can imagine it's so important for a woman that doesn't really have that knowledge, and also maybe people around them that they know more what they can do, and that they should be aware of their body and how they're feeling. And it's what I got from it is that because of so much is going on within this transition, I can imagine some people might think, oh, I'm lazy because I don't have more energy to do what I did before, or like 5 years ago or something like that. But it's actually your own body molding or shifting in a way, and it needs to heal, or like not heal, but like it needs rest, and it needs the recovery and getting used to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad that that's what you've taken away from it. And I think it's also important for women to be curious about what's going on. So if, for instance, and fatigue is so common. So what perimenopause is asking us to do ultimately is let go of what's no longer serving us and getting us back onto the path that's right for us. And so if you're experiencing a lot of fatigue, could you be curious about what your body is trying to ask you to do? Why is it asking you to slow down? Why is it asking you to sort of pay more attention and stop doing so much? Where in your life are you pushing too much? Where are you moving too fast? What do you need to let go so that you can have more time? So I think, having that curiosity and self-reflection and being open about what the invitation might be, what the lesson is, adds so much more depth and richness to it.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed chatting with you both.
Thank you for listening to Vision Chat. You can find more about us at visionofprofoundhealing.com, where we offer readings, courses, and classes.